The first rifle shot cracked through the Colorado mountains like thunder. It echoed between granite cliffs, sending birds scattering into the pale October sky. Evelyn Carter pressed herself against a pine tree, her heart hammering so loud she feared the sound would give her away. A second shot followed, then a third, closer this time. At 26, Evelyn had learned the sound of trouble, and what she heard now meant only one thing: men were hunting. The Timberline stretched before her, the last border between thick forest and the barren alpine slope above. She had camped here many times before. It was a quiet, safe place for gathering herbs. But today, it felt like a trap. "Come on out, woman!" a rough voice called through the trees. "We know you're up there." Evelyn's fingers brushed the small medicine bag tied at her belt. Inside were herbs, salves, and a few precious tools of her trade. She had started the morning gathering yarrow near a spring. Now 5 armed men were sweeping through the woods below, rifles raised, boots crunching in rhythm. Bounty hunters, by their look. But what bounty could they possibly want from her? She had seen their kind before in the mining towns. Hard men with cold eyes who made their living chasing blood money. The leader was a tall man, with a graying beard and a cruel smile. Around his neck hung something that made Evelyn's stomach twist. Dark, shriveled shapes strung together like beads. She didn't need to look closer to know they were human ears. A twig snapped nearby. Too close. Evelyn ran. Her soft leather boots made no sound on the pine needles as she darted uphill. She moved like the old Ute woman had taught her years ago, quiet as shadow, fast as wind. She had lived in these mountains for 3 years, healing whoever came to her door, miners, ranchers, settlers, and even wounded natives. But that mercy had made her enemies. Rumors spread faster than fire in the territories, and kindness was often mistaken for betrayal. "Don't run, miss," another voice shouted, younger, eager. "Garrison wants you alive, but he didn't say how pretty you gotta be when we bring you down." Her blood ran cold. So that was it. They were sent for her because of the wounded man she had helped 3 weeks ago. A Comanche warrior she'd found bleeding near Beaver Creek. She'd cleaned his wounds, fought the fever, and saved his life. He had left before dawn, giving her a small beaded pouch as thanks. She hadn't seen him since. Now she understood. Someone wanted to know where that man went, and they were willing to kill her to find out. A bullet whistled past her ear, slamming into a tree trunk. Bark exploded beside her face. "Next one won't miss," the leader shouted. Evelyn ducked behind a boulder, her breath coming fast and ragged. The air at 10,000 feet was thin and cruel. She could feel the mountain watching her, indifferent to her fear. "You can't run forever," the leader's voice boomed. "We just want to talk about that Indian you patched up. Come quiet, and no one gets hurt." Evelyn almost laughed, bitter and breathless. Men like these didn't climb a mountain to talk. They came to collect. Her mind raced. Stay in the forest and risk being surrounded, or break for the open slope and risk a bullet. Neither choice promised survival. She glanced uphill. The timberline was just 100 yards away. Above it, the open tundra stretched wide under the morning sky. If she could reach it, she'd have a clear view, and maybe a fighting chance. She ran. Branches whipped her arms. The ground rose steeply, stealing her breath. Boots pounded behind her, shouts growing louder. "Cut her off! Circle left!" Quote. They were trained. These weren't drunk bounty men. They moved like soldiers, organized, precise. Evelyn's legs burned. She thought of her grandmother back in Missouri, the woman who taught her that healing knew no boundaries. Pain spoke one language, her grandmother used to say. And now, that belief might cost her life. A final burst of speed carried her out of the trees and into open sunlight. The wind hit her like a hammer, freezing and fierce. The world opened wide. Snow patches glittered across rocky slopes, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. She turned. The 5 men emerged from the forest, rifles raised. The leader stepped forward, his pale eyes locked on her. "Last chance, Miss Carter. Tell us where the savage went." Evelyn's chest heaved, her auburn hair whipping in the wind. "I don't know any Garrison," she called back. And I've tended too many wounded to remember them all. You're wasting your time." The man spat dark tobacco into the snow. "Now that's disappointing. Real disappointing. Boys, bring her in." They began to fan out, careful and slow, cutting off every escape. Evelyn backed toward a cluster of rocks, her hand finding the small knife at her belt. It was a surgeon's blade, meant for healing, not fighting. But out here, sometimes healing required blood. The wind howled around her, carrying the scent of snow and pine. She thought of all the people she had saved, the miners with crushed hands, the women she'd helped through childbirth, the children she'd kept alive through fever nights. Would anyone remember her if she died here? 15 yards now. The hunters advanced, rifles steady, faces set. Evelyn's pulse steadied. Fear turned to something else, cold resolve. If this was where her story ended, she'd make them earn it. "Come on, Miss Carter," the leader sneered. "Don't make us spoil that pretty face." She lifted her chin. "If you want me, you'll have to take me." The man's smile widened, but before he could answer, a sound cut through the mountain air. Not a shot, not a shout. A wild, fierce cry, deep and powerful, rolled down the slope. The men froze, startled. From the ridge above, a dark figure stood outlined against the sun. A rifle glinted in his hands. His voice carried across the wind, strong and commanding. "The woman is under my protection," he shouted. "Leave now or feed the ravens." Evelyn's heart stopped. She knew that voice. It was him, the Comanche man she had healed, and he had come back. For a heartbeat, the mountain went still. The wind paused, birds hushed, and even the bounty hunters froze where they stood. Then the leader, Briggs, she heard one of his men call him, let out a low growl. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. The savage came back for his nurse. He yanked Evelyn toward him, gripping her arm so hard she winced, his revolver pressed cold against her ribs. "Show yourself, redskin!" Briggs shouted. "You come down now, or I'll put a bullet in your angel's heart!" Evelyn's pulse thundered. The Comanche man, Noona, that was the name he had told her, didn't move. He stood on the ridge, framed by the blinding sky. Then his voice came again, steady as stone. "Let her go. You don't want to do this." Briggs laughed, ugly and loud. "Oh, I think I do. You're outnumbered, son. 5 rifles to 1. We take her, you follow, and we drop you like the dog you are." But Evelyn saw it, the faint tremor in Briggs's hands. He was trying to sound in control, but Noona's sudden appearance had rattled him. A rifle cracked from the trees. One of the hunters shouted, "I see him!" The shot went wide. Another man cried out, stumbling as his gun flew from his grip. Noona had moved, fast as lightning. In seconds, the quiet mountains erupted in chaos. "Jenkins! Morrison! Circle left!" Briggs roared, dragging Evelyn behind a rock for cover. "He's playing Ghost!" The men spread out, firing into shadows. But the Comanche was never where they aimed. He struck from above, vanished, then reappeared at their flanks. One by one, their numbers fell, some crying out, some silenced in an instant. Evelyn struggled in Briggs's grip. "He'll kill you all," she warned, breathless. "Maybe," Briggs hissed, "but you'll die first if he doesn't show." Before she could speak, a sudden scream tore through the air. One of the younger bounty hunters stumbled from the pines, clutching his throat, blood pouring between his fingers. He fell face first in the snow. Another man, swift, dashed forward to help, but didn't make it 3 steps before something dark and fast struck him down. 2 men down, 3 left. Briggs's grip tightened. His breath stank of tobacco and hate. "He's using Apache tricks," said the last man beside him, voice shaking. "He's playing with us." "Shut it!" Briggs barked, but even he looked pale now. Evelyn's heart raced, torn between terror and relief. She knew Noona was out there, fighting for her. The same man she had nursed when he was close to death was now a shadow of vengeance, moving through the forest like part of the mountain itself. "Let her go, Briggs." The voice came again, closer, calm as ever. Evelyn turned her head and saw him, 20 yards away, rifle raised, eyes sharp and cold. The wind whipped his long dark hair around his face, and in that moment, he looked carved from the land itself. Briggs swung Evelyn in front of him like a shield. One move, and she dies. "You'd better make that shot count," Noona said softly, "because it'll be your last." Briggs hesitated. The silence stretched tight. "Your men are dying," Noona continued. "One more's bleeding out behind that tree. You can still walk away." "Not without you, savage," Briggs snarled. "You killed my brother near Trinidad. I'll see your scalp before the day's out." Noona's eyes narrowed. "Your brother?" Quote. "Charlie Briggs. Supply wagon ambush, 2 weeks back. You remember?" "I wasn't there," Noona said. His voice didn't shake. "2 weeks ago, I was 500 miles south, trying to trade for women and children your army took prisoner." "Liar!" Briggs roared. "Garrison told me himself." Then Garrison lied. The words hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Evelyn could see Briggs's certainty flicker. Doubt crept into his pale eyes. "Ask yourself," Noona said, "who benefits from you chasing me up this mountain? Who gains if you die out here instead of Garrison answering for his crimes?" Briggs's jaw tightened. "You talk too much." "Maybe, but think. He sends you after me with half a story and a promise of gold. Maybe he never wanted you to come back at all." For a moment, Briggs's gun wavered. Then one of the younger hunters groaned where he lay, half-conscious. The sound broke the spell. Briggs cursed, shoving Evelyn hard to the ground. "Talbot, pick her up," he barked. "We're taking her with us." But Talbot hesitated. His eyes darted between Evelyn and the shadow on the ridge. "Boss," he whispered, "maybe we should just leave. This ain't natural." "Move!" Briggs yelled. Before Talbot could obey, a stone flew from nowhere, striking him square on the temple. He dropped like a sack. In the next heartbeat, Noona fired. Briggs's revolver spun from his hand, landing in the snow. Silence fell again. Only the wind spoke. "End this," Noona said quietly. "Take your wounded and go. Tell Garrison to find another fool." Briggs stood panting, staring at his bleeding knuckles. His eyes flicked to Evelyn, then back to Noona. The rage in him warred with something older, colder, fear. Finally, he spat into the snow. "This ain't over. You hear me, Redskin? You bought yourself time. That's all." He grabbed the surviving man by the arm and began dragging Talbot downhill. The others stumbled after. When they disappeared into the trees, the mountain was silent again. Evelyn lay trembling in the snow, her breath ragged. She heard soft footsteps approach. Then a shadow fell across her. "You're safe now," Noona said, kneeling beside her. His voice was low, steady, her throat tightened. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left," he replied. "I was watching." Quote, "You shouldn't have," she said, tears mixing with cold wind. "They would have killed you." "They almost did," he said, "and they still might. We can't stay here." He offered his hand. She took it, her fingers cold in his warm, calloused grasp. "We go higher," he said. "There's shelter in the cliffs. Come." She rose on shaky legs. Together they moved toward the white peaks above while the wind howled behind them, erasing their footprints. Evelyn looked once over her shoulder at the forest below, where blood stained the snow and echoes of gunfire still clung to the air. Her quiet life as a healer was gone. And the man walking beside her, the Comanche she had once saved, was now her only chance to survive. The storm came fast. What began as thin flakes soon turned to a curtain of white. The wind screamed through the peaks, carrying snow like knives. By the time Evelyn and Noona found the cave, both were shaking from cold. Inside, the mountain swallowed the wind. Noona built a fire from a hidden stash of dry wood he'd left on a past hunt. Flames flickered weakly against the stone walls, painting their faces in shifting orange light. Evelyn sank down beside it, clutching the blanket he handed her. "You've used this place before," she said, her voice rough from exhaustion. He nodded. "The mountain gives shelter to those who respect it, but it takes from those who don't." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind outside. Evelyn's body began to thaw, but her mind raced. She thought of Briggs and his men, how easily hate had turned them into hunters. "They'll come back," she said finally. "Yes," Noona said. "Not today, but they will." Evelyn glanced at him. His face was drawn, his breathing heavy. "You reopened your wounds," she said, moving closer. "Let me see." He shook his head. "You need rest." "I'm a healer," she replied softly. "Let me do my work." He didn't argue again. She unwrapped the bandages she had hastily tied that morning. The skin beneath was angry and red, but the bleeding had mostly stopped. "You shouldn't have come back for me," she whispered as she worked. "I couldn't let you die because of me," he said simply. She looked up at him, her green eyes catching firelight. "You could have run south, gone back to your people." "My people are scattered," he said quietly. "Some dead, some in camps. I came back because I owed a debt. And," he paused, staring into the flames, "because I didn't want to disappear again." Evelyn didn't answer. Words felt too small for the weight of what they'd endured. The wind howled outside, fierce and endless. Later, as the storm deepened, they huddled closer to the fire. Evelyn's eyes grew heavy, her head resting against the cold stone wall. "What did Briggs mean about Garrison?" she murmured. "Who is he?" Noona's voice was low. "A man who profits from war. He needs enemies to stay powerful. Peace would ruin him." "And you were trying to make peace," she said, understanding. "I was trying to keep my people alive," he answered. "That's enough to make me dangerous." She stared at the fire. "Then he'll never stop." "No," Noona agreed, "but neither will we." The fire burned lower. Sleep finally claimed her. When Evelyn awoke, dawn painted the snow outside in soft, pink light. The storm had passed. Noona was already awake, standing at the cave mouth, scanning the white world below. "They'll be tracking us," he said. "We move now." They began the slow descent. Evelyn's body ached, her shoulders still raw from the climb. But she followed him without complaint. The snow was deep, each step a struggle. By midday, they spotted smoke, thin and gray, rising from the valley below, a trading post. "Ortiz's place," Noona said. "He owes me a favor." The small adobe outpost sat tucked against the rocks, weathered but sturdy. Inside, the warmth of a fire greeted them, and the heavy scent of coffee filled the air. Samuel Ortiz was a short, broad man with sharp eyes. He studied them both before nodding. "You're being hunted," he said. "We know," Noona replied. Ortiz sighed. "Word's out. Garrison put a bounty on your heads, alive or dead. $5,000. Evelyn's stomach turned. "For what crime?" "Being inconvenient," Ortiz said simply. "I'll hide you, but only for a while. He's sending men." That night, Evelyn treated Ortiz's pregnant wife, easing her pain and calming her fear. When she finished, Maria Ortiz pressed her hands together. "Gracias, doctora," she whispered. "May the spirits protect you." Evelyn smiled weakly. "We could use all the protection we can get." The next morning, the sound of hooves shattered the quiet. Dozens of riders. Briggs was with them, and beside him, a man in a black coat and polished boots. Garrison. From the window, Evelyn saw his cold, gray eyes sweep the yard. He dismounted with a smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Miss Carter," he called. "We meet at last." Evelyn stepped outside before Noona could stop her. "You've hunted us across half the territory," she said, her voice steady. "Why?" "Because truth," Garrison said smoothly, "is a matter of control. You and your savage friend threaten that. I need a story, one that makes sense to people in Denver and Washington. A white healer kidnapped by a Comanche. The nation would rally for war. You'll give them that story, Miss Carter. And if I refuse, then I take you anyway, and the story writes itself." Evelyn looked past him to the soldiers, to Briggs, to the townsmen who'd followed orders without question. "You'll kill us," she said. "Eventually," Garrison said. "But first, you'll serve a purpose." Noona stepped into the courtyard then, rifle in hand. "You'll have to take us both." Garrison's smile turned thin. "You're already dead, son. You just don't know it yet." Evelyn took a breath. Then she raised her voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You all know me," she cried. "You've seen me heal your families, your children, and now you stand with a man who'd murder me to start his war?" The crowd shifted uneasily. Even Briggs looked uncertain. Garrison's face hardened. Evelyn pressed on. "If you take us, you'll answer to every miner, every mother, every soul I ever helped. You'll have to live knowing you killed the only thing in these mountains that still cared about saving life." For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Garrison spat. "Enough!" He turned to his men. "Burn the place! Kill them both!" Before the order could be carried out, a gunshot cracked. The bullet hit the dirt near Garrison's boot. Ortiz stood at the doorway, rifle leveled. "You'll burn nothing here," he said. "Not while I breathe." The tension broke. Shouts rang out. Men scattered for cover. Noona fired first, then ducked behind a wagon. The air filled with smoke and chaos. Evelyn grabbed a fallen rifle, firing clumsily, the kick slamming into her wounded shoulder. When the gunfire stopped, the yard was silent, except for the groans of the wounded. Garrison was gone, vanished into the dust. Briggs lay on the ground, bleeding but alive, staring at the sky. Evelyn stood trembling, the rifle falling from her hands. "It's over," she whispered. "For now," Noona said, lowering his weapon. "Men like Garrison don't die easy." Evelyn turned to him, the morning light cutting through the smoke. "Then we'll make sure his lies do." He reached for her hand. "Together?" "Always." Quote. They stood in the ruined yard, side by side, as the sun rose over the white peaks. Behind them, smoke curled into the sky like a promise. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. The wind swept through the valley, cold and pure. And as the hawk's cry echoed across the mountains, Evelyn Carter and Noona walked forward, two souls who had chosen courage over hate, love over fear, and each other over the safety of silence.